So we just kind of went around the room. Who's done trade show marketing before? Okay. So we got some, let's get some foundation done and some good reminders done. And then of those of you who have done trade show marketing before, how many of you have done the, like you're sitting in your booth or standing in your booth and people are walking by desperately trying not to make eye contact with you? Who's ever been there? Okay. Yes. And then who's had the experience of, oh, you had a great conversation with somebody, you got a bunch of information about their project, you've got their contact information, excuse me, you send, you schedule and follow up an appointment, and then you watch them have the exact same conversation with your neighbor. And then the exact same combination or conversation with the neighbor next door, right? Who's like been there? Okay. All right, great. You guys are in the right place. I guarantee you're gonna love this because we're gonna talk about the before, during, and after, the blueprint for making trade show marketing really productive for you. It is one of the most leveraged ways to get in front of your customers or potential customers, and everybody who walks through that door by definition is pre-qualified, right? I know there are like 3 people that are trying to figure out, what they do with a sunny or snowy Saturday, but I think for the most part, people that are there because they're interested in being there. So we're going to talk about before, during, and after. You have in your notes pages before the expo, during the expo, and after the expo. Oh, here you go.
Awesome, thank you.
And take one of those too. You won't need it till later.
All right.
Unless you want to tell me this is awesome before you even have a chance to see it.
Well, we'll see it.
All right, so my purpose today is to get you thinking differently a little bit about trade shows. So often, trade shows remind me of like when you buy advertising and you have all this run up and negotiation to what's going to actually happen, and then they're like, oh yeah, and then by the way, we need your ad by next Wednesday, and you end up putting something crap out there because you've got a time pressure. And trade shows are very much like you work and work and work to get the booth right, but if you haven't done the before, the during, and the after, they're not nearly as productive as they could be. So I want to see if we can get you thinking a little bit differently about these and expand your beliefs about what's possible, and then we'll talk through some strategies that you guys can apply during this show. That's why we're doing them pre-show. So thinking differently, what are your objectives? And you can just kind of shout this stuff out. What are your objectives for the what's this thing called now? The builder and remodeling show? Building and remodeling show? Mm-hmm. What are your objectives for this? Exposure, so brand building, okay.
Mine's a little different. It's twofold. I'm there to meet all the people that are at the show. Okay. And then also to, meet potential project owners.
So, so networking, in other words.
Networking, yeah. Contractors,
So you can be a supplier to some of the contractors that are at the show. And then you've got and who's there to actually generate leads? Okay, good. All right. How much business do you need to do to pay for the expo? I'm gonna guess with the lion's share of you that one sale probably pays for the expo. That would be my guess. Okay, your average dollar sales tend to be fairly high. How will you know if it's successful? This is something to be really clear as a team about. If part of your objective is to network with people, with other contractors that can come on in. Hey guys, we might need one more of these, unless I can talk Derek out of it.
I think I have 2. I think I have 2.
You have 2. Okay. Yeah, you can have that back. And yeah, I'd say wherever you
want to copy?
I think.
Am I good here?
Yeah, you're good here. Okay. I think we're good if these are the last 2.
Sure.
Okay.
She doesn't know.
If it's to network, and yeah, we've got another. We certainly have another chair here. If one of your objectives is to network with GCs, how many GCs, how many follow-ups? How are you going to know if that's a successful result from the show. If your objective is lead generation, how many leads? You know, we can't hit a target you can't see. So you want to give your people who are working the show, here's the goal. Our goal is that we have 10 follow-up appointments that are highly qualified. Our goal is that we have 20. Okay, if your goal is exposure and brand building, what does that translate to in terms of how's the team going to know that they're successful? Okay, so really defining that so that the team goes in with a target to hit. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Oh, here we go. This might be a good one for brand building. All right, how many contacts are you adding to the database? It may be who has new products or services that you're going to launch. Anybody? And that's part of why the people are coming in to see you, right? Is what are the new trends? What are the new styles, designs, colors? It might be to take somebody who's already a prospect and get them across the line. One of the things that I think is so fun about this show in particular in your industry is that you guys have a very tactile industry. People like to touch it and, you know, open and close and see the colors and pick up and feel what things look like. That might be what it takes to get somebody to move from an initial design that's on paper to, yeah, let's go. Let's get it on the calendar. So really, what are your objectives for the expo? Making sure you're clear on it, making sure the team's clear on it. So how much do you need to break even? Again, I think with most of you, one sale will break even. But you need to know what your acquisition cost for a lead is, what your acquisition cost for a sale is, and what your average dollar sale is. Okay, if you don't know those numbers, your acquisition cost for a lead is your total marketing spend divided by your number of leads. Your acquisition cost for a sale is your total marketing spend divided by your total number of sales. And then your average dollar sale is a calculation. Some of them are going to be small, some will be very large, but there's an average in the middle. Your break even, if you want the formula, is the expense of the show all in, including labor, including freight and all that kind of stuff coming in, divided by your gross margin expressed as a percent. So let's just say you're $10,000 into the show all in, and your gross margin is 35%, right? It's 10,000 divided by, or sorry, your cost of good, your gross margin is 35%. Your break even is 10,000 divided by 0.35. Okay, so that can give you the benchmark. That's what you need to sell at the show to break even on it. Any business you bring in above that is pure profit. You've already covered your cost of goods. Okay, anything above that's pure profit. All right, so let's talk about what needs to happen before the expo. Part of what Nari and Maba are doing is helping getting people in the door. Okay, but they're two fairly small organizations, right? There's only so much ad money to go around and blanket Madison with billboards and radio ads and all those kinds of things. To the extent that each of you is blasting this out to your databases and posting on your social media, okay, that's more people that are going to come in through the door. You all have the ability to give tickets to your database. Okay, one of the, I think one of the biggest, the company that got the biggest number of people from their database in last year was W.E. Davies and Sons. Okay, and all they did was blast out to their database and their social media, we can get you a free ticket to the expo. It's a $10 value. And I think, I don't even remember whether we gave them free tickets or whether they paid for 10 tickets. But you know what? If 100 people come in and you spend $1,000, that all now know that you gave them the ticket to get into this show, the law of reciprocity kicks in. Okay, you gave them something, now they feel obligated to give you something in return, at least to spend some time with you in your booth. Depending on, I'm going to go through these in some detail. Depending on who your target market is, depends on your message. That's going to drive your messaging, and it's going to drive your booth, and it's going to drive what you're talking about in your booth. So I want to go through that in a little bit more detail, communicating what makes you unique. And I'll show you some photos of that. Messaging that has a call to action. Okay, give them a reason to take a next step with you at the show. It's way too easy to say, yes, I'm interested, call me next week, and they go home and they're into the same chaos at work that they left on Friday afternoon, and the show's a distant memory. Give them a reason to connect with you at the show. We'll go through some examples of that, and then getting people to your booth, we'll talk about that. So for starters, who are you targeting? Who is the ideal client for you? Are they in a particular neighborhood? Do they live a certain lifestyle? Do they live in a particular kind of home? Okay, one of the most productive real estate advisors, residential real estate advisors that I have ever known was the Harley lady. Okay, I don't know how many residential real estate people there are in Madison, Wisconsin, but I feel like there's got to be thousands of them, right? Like you can't throw a football and not hit 3 or 4 of them, right? She was a Harley lady. I ride a Harley. I understand the Harley lifestyle. I understand what's important to you and how you like to live. If you're a Harley rider or you love the Harley lifestyle, I'm your person. One of the most productive commercial or residential real estate people I've ever met. Okay, what is your target or targets? It's generally not one. What are your targets? Maybe, and for starters, are you new home or remodeled home? What's your preference? Doesn't mean you don't do that other stuff, but what's your preference? Are you a first-time home buyer or remodeler, or have you done this before? Some people have really, really good systems for working with first-timers. That's really comforting to a buyer. Men, women. Again, lifestyle. You know, what is it that they like to do? Where do they live? Do they live on a lake? Do they live in the country? Do they live in the city? Who do you want to target? And if you can't figure this out, go back to your favorite projects over the years and which ones were a total blast. Like which ones were really fun. That's your target. Because you'll naturally speak those people's language. Does that make sense to everybody? Mm-hmm. Mine, when we started Action Coach 15 years ago, mine were, I was like, all right, this is a franchise, so I just wrote a big check, right? Just wrote a big check to buy into this. Mine were wine, cheese, chocolate, anything outdoors, and manufacturing. Those were my 5. Now, we obviously work a lot with you guys, right? In construction and in the trades. But those were the ones I picked. You know, those were the ones I picked. The more you're clear about your target, here's the thing about targeting. Let's just do this here. Target is the most important piece of the puzzle. Then it becomes, where are they? Are they in particular neighborhoods? Are they on a lake? Are they up north? What do they want that they are willing to pay for? Then where do they go for their info? And then what's the actual medium? How are you going to reach them? and your message and your call to action. Right? The most important one is right there. Once you know your target, that starts to drive your uniqueness. I think, hang on, I'm gonna go, nope, still got the slide. Here's what I see a lot of. People put befores and afters in their booth. You know, here's before pictures, here's after pictures. Or they put pictures of all of their finished projects, which are beautiful, right? So here's some kitchens, here's some bathrooms, here's some lake homes, here's some new construction, here's some residential construction, here's some basements, here's some garages, here's some patios and porches and decks. Okay?
Too much.
What do? I have no clue. I have no clue what you do, right? If you are really clear in saying, hey, if you do outdoor living, we do this really, really well. If you do kids, nobody does kids better than we do. That doesn't mean what you're doing is attracting someone who's looking for what you do. Doesn't mean you don't take those other kinds of projects. But the clearer you can give signals to people, what's in your booth needs to match your target. And again, if you don't know, just who have been your favorite projects over the years? Do that. Messaging for your target. I live on Lake Monona, and there are 3 or 4 different lift companies that come and, you know, they have their barges and they pick up your pier and all that kind of stuff. And I had this zip tied to my pier. I don't remember when it was, August or September. They start lowering the lake levels in October. Free lift removal with any dock removal. How targeted is that? They didn't blanket Winona Way. They didn't blanket the whole neighborhood. They didn't stick it in my mailbox. They stuck it right next to my boat. That's a wonderful example of a really highly targeted message. And does it get your attention? Free lift removal, that's expensive. Yes, it gets my attention. Oh, and by the way, you do dock removal too? I didn't know that. Super simple message, very highly targeted, cuts right through the clutter. That's what you guys are dealing with right now is clutter. A lot of clutter. A lot of people who are trying to be all things to everybody. All right, getting people to your booth. This is still pre the show, okay? Pre the expo. Warm up your database. Any prior clients, anybody who's in your database, invite them to visit you at the show. Okay, we've got new products to show you. We have new colors or trends to show you. We have stuff for you to pick up and feel. You've been thinking about this. I've actually got samples of it that you can see in the booth. Okay, so give them a reason to visit. We've got specials that only are going to take place on these 2 days of the show. Give out tickets. Again, if it costs you $5 or $10 a ticket, that's the cheapest marketing you're going to do all year. Okay, to actually get somebody physically to visit you, include a ticket for them to bring a friend or a son or a daughter. So really make use of your database and your social media both. Schedule appointments. This is so interesting. I used to work in manufacturing. I worked for Fiskars for many, many years. And then I worked for a level company, like construction levels and laser levels and that kind of stuff. And when we would do trade shows, and I'll just take US trade shows, McCormick Hall is 3 full buildings of vendors. And I had a buyer, we used to just book appointments with our buyers. And I had a buyer say to me once, I asked them why they did that, because they were kind of on this schedule and it never seemed like they got to see everybody in the show. And he said he said, if I spend 60 minutes at every booth or 60 seconds at every booth, there's physically not enough time during the course of this show for me to see every single vendor here. So typically at the what used to be the NARI Expo, now is the Build and Remodel Expo, I think the average stay is 2.5 hours. It's about 2.5 hours, and there are, what, 90 booths or something like that. That gives them literally 90 seconds per booth. It's really hard to build rapport and get people excited and get them to raise their hand to take a bona fide next step in 90 seconds. It's tough. You guys are big ticket purchases. So the more that you can pre-schedule appointments, the better. Especially if you have somebody who's already got a project in process and you just need to show them samples or colors or whatever. Okay, get them across the line that way. Give them a reason to commit. Hey, we've got a special here that we're running this weekend at the show only. You get 1 window for every 5. I don't know. Pick it. Something that makes sense. Something that you already have a healthy profit margin on. Something that's a high perceived value. You know, something that a manufacturer will give you co-op money on to support. But give them a reason to come to the show, meet with you at the show, and actually take a next step at the show. Yeah, so here's just some examples. You know, see our new gizmo. This is where I think you guys have all the trends, all the colors, all the samples, all of the, you know, when you're at the show, if you're showing things like windows and cupboards and things like that, have doors open, have windows open so people start to interact with them. Because when you just look at stuff, it just looks all nice and tidy. You don't realize that it has a really cool way of this door opens or this window opens or the window tilts in or it has blinds embedded in the window or whatever, you know, whatever that stuff is, have that actually going on at the show. It might be something, again, depending on your average dollar sale and your acquisition cost. If your acquisition cost for a customer is $1,000, then give them $1,000. You're going to spend it anyway. But that gets them to spend it at the show and then show only specials. Communicate with your team. Again, here are our objectives for the expo, and it's worth having a pre-show or pre-show meeting in the morning and a post-show meeting in the afternoon. Okay, remember team, here's our objectives for the day. Get everybody pumped up. Contests, whoever books the most follow-up appointments gets something, whatever that is for you, whatever's going to make your team excited. Reiterate who your target is, what your call to action is, what your messaging is. They don't do this every day, and we got to really, really get this ingrained in their head. Okay. During. So far you've defined your objectives. The team understands what they are. You've defined your financial objectives. You've defined your target market, your messaging, and a plan to get people in your booth. All of that's done. Now it's showtime. So, what's your one key message per target? Hey, you have pets, you won't believe this cool new whatever. Me and Derek both have dogs. That like makes cleaning up all the dog hair off of your couch the best thing since sliced bread. I don't know. But what, you know, for your target, what's that one key message per target? And again, this is more for the team than for you guys. Okay, so your team that doesn't do this every day, isn't out marketing every day, what is it that you want them to say so they're not stumbling? So they're not going, well, you know, we do remodels, and we do kitchens, and we do bathrooms, and we, you know, and they just start to trip, and then they don't know what to say, and so they stop saying anything. Eliminate clutter in your booth. Keep papers and all that kind of stuff out of sight. Okay, you want to make this very inviting for people to come into. Like what Kim's done in here, like don't make sure your booth's not looking like that. Movement's better than static. Again, like if you're just watching people, hey, have you seen this new door? You know, as they're walking by, even starting to use your own props. Pictures are better than words in your signage, right? In your banners, and tactile and interactive props. Like just use this. You guys have fun stuff. Use it. So, all right, booth etiquette. I think I was like the booth Nazi at the last expo because I made everybody stand up. But when you're sitting in your booth like this, how welcoming and inviting is it for me to come and talk to you? It's not at all, right? I know people's feet get tired. I know. But I used to not allow chairs in any of our trade show booths because I didn't want people to sit down. Okay, get out in the aisle, interact with the crowd, be inviting, welcome people in. Hey, have you seen this really cool thing that we have? Okay, we're gonna have to get out and actually interrupt people because our instinct is I don't want to be sold. If I look at you, you're gonna try and sell me, right? But if you just say, hey, look at this cool thing we have, okay, that's not threatening, that's kind of welcoming. Here we go. That was the thing I was looking at before. Can you tell what this company does? You can't really, right? They do building and remodeling. Okay, great. What makes them different from any of the other 30 building and remodeling contractors that are there? You can't tell. So really, really hone these in on your targets. Maybe you specialize in transformations. This happens to be an exterior one. Maybe you do modern better than anybody else. Okay, especially the designers, right? You guys each have your own kind of sense of style. Use that. Use that. It doesn't make any sense for you to try and fit somebody who's not your target, you know, try and fit your style into what somebody wants that when it doesn't mesh. Just attract the people that you want. Maybe you do historic restoration. Architecture network. If any of you know Arlen Kai, do any of you know Arlen Kai? So Arlen used to be a client. Architecture network specialized in historic restoration. Never lost a case with the Landmarks Commission ever in the city of Madison. Now, how strong of a unique selling proposition do you think that was? It's huge. Maybe not for first-time buyers, but for anybody who's tried to work with the city before. We make things easy. Here's how. Here's our 3-step super easy process. Okay, maybe that's your differentiator, is your process. We have young kids, so we knew how to do kids' rooms. We have dogs, we know how to do dogs. We have cats, we know how to do cats. Things like that give you instant rapport with somebody. And all of a sudden, you're not talking about what you're trying to sell them. You're building a relationship on a whole different level. Setting appointments, here we go. 90 exhibitors, average expo stay is 2 hours, so 1.3 minutes per booth if everybody gives each booth a look. Okay, that's really difficult to build rapport and trust in any kind of differentiation, okay, in 75 seconds. If you preset appointments, the average stay is 12 minutes. Again, here's what's new and trendy. Here's the products, finalized plans. Get them to mentally commit. That's what we're looking for. If you've invited them and you've given them a free ticket, they'll give you 12 minutes. Yeah, I just had some examples of cool things that get attention, different rail styles in this case. I think when I put this together, I was redoing my deck and I was looking at railing samples, and you can see things in a picture, but to actually pick them up and see what they look like physically is a whole different, like, we were looking at something that looked like this. And then when I actually saw it, like, at the show, I was like, we ended up with glass. Okay, glass panels on our deck. Things like flooring, right? Or different tabletops, countertops, all that kind of stuff get attention. Calls to action. Here's what I don't want you to do. Don't do a drawing for a free iPad. Okay? Or for a gift card of some sort. You want to make your call to action actually related to your company or your products. So it could be tied to why you do what you do. Like, for example, at ActionCOACH, when you engage us in a program or in a strategic planning session or something like that, we make a donation on your behalf to an organization called Buy One, Give One. It's if you've heard of the micro lending like thing where they'll lend $100 so somebody can get started in business. This is a micro giving. So every time someone does business with us, we fund an entrepreneur in a certain country, we give clean water to a family for 100 days, and I don't know, there's a third one, something about a goat, right? But to really, that's bigger than us. But maybe we say, hey, but by doing business with us, you're doing good in the world. And we're gonna actually, if you even just stop by our booth, we'll donate an extra 100 days of clean water to somebody. So it could be tied to something bigger than what you do. Again, it should be relevant to your industry or company. High perceived value, low cost. Something like your first set of drawings is on us. That's an X dollar value. You have to do it anyway, right? You can't even begin to give an estimate without some sort of drawing or at least rendering or planning of what could be. So maybe if you agree to a project here at the show, or if you agree to the follow-up meeting with us and you go forward with that project, your first set of drawings is on us. That's an X dollar value. Okay, so something that's specifically tied to you. Maybe you sell Christmas trees and we'll give you free delivery if you buy here at the show today. So what is it that you may do anyway that's of high perceived value to the customer? Time sensitive, has to happen. You have to take that next step at the show. They may not have to commit to the project at the show, but they do have to commit to the next step. And that deal may only be good until the end of January, or that deal is good through February 15th. It's not an indefinite deal. Okay, so who's ever heard of this? That sales decisions are based on logic and emotion's more important? Especially in your industry, you're selling hope, right? You're selling hope of a better, different future of some sort, okay? That hope is going to get them 80% of the way there. The logic is the certainty part. Here's our 6-step easy process. Here's here are examples of other families that have done the same thing that you're wanting to do, and how, you know, testimonials, how excited they are about their finished project. We can get you in if you commit between now and the end of January. We can get you in the schedule in this period of time. Okay, some certainty on when it's actually going to happen. Oh, here we go. Open certainty. This really gets into you asking questions. So here's what I used to do at Fiskar. She doesn't have any scissors in here. I started in the lawn and garden division in Sauk when it was still in Sauk City, and I could tell you everything that there was about any garden tool we had. I could tell you about its ergonomic design. I could tell you about the blades. I could tell you about the metal and how it doesn't rust. And I could tell you about all these features, right? That's really not what they wanted to know. What they wanted to know was, can they continue to garden well into their 80s? Because the tools are going to do the work for them. It's the benefit of the benefit. You get to that by asking instead of telling. Does that make sense to everybody? This doesn't become I'm going to throw up every feature and benefit of a window or a design on you. Okay? Just tell me how you live. What do you love about your house? What would you change about it if you could? Why is that important to you? What would that allow you to do? What would it feel like? What's frustrating about the way that your house is set up now? What's frustrating about your kitchen? Tell me more about that. Your job is to ask question after question after question after question. Okay, not tell. You can tell them in a follow-up appointment. Some of your questions are going to be around opening questions around timing. You know, really, what is your timeline? There's something that's driving their decision to be at this show this year. If they finally are sick enough about their kitchen to redo their kitchen, why is that? You know, this was easy last year because everybody was so sick of being at home during COVID that it just drove remodeling through the roof. But what is it that's driving them being there now? Again, opening questions, just how do they live? Just tell me, what neighborhood are you in? Tell me about, do you have kids? Do you have pets? Is it just, you know, just you? Is it what? Tell me about how you live. Get them talking. Just get them talking. Investigating needs. Is there anything in particular that's driving timing? What do they kind of generally like and dislike in terms of style? All these things you're going to want to take notes on. Closing questions. Well, it sounds like you're really kind of excited about, you know, the possibilities of working here and here and here. How about if we set up a follow-up appointment? Here's how that works. Okay. Opening questions again. What are you hoping to find at the show? What specific products are you looking for? Tell me about how you live. What doesn't work about how you live now? Those are all good opening questions. Investigating needs. What do you like most? What would you change if you could? When I live in it's about a 115-year-old lake house, so it was one of those typical, started as a cottage, got added on to 4 or 5 different times, you know, super cobbled together kind of homes. And I remember when we got to there was a bunch of stuff that I didn't like about the house. Like, for starters, it's on a lake, and I like to cook, and the kitchen's in the back of the house by the street. Okay, you've got to ask some specific questions to understand that kind of, you know, what would I change if I could? Why is that important to you? Well, because I like to cook and I can't see the water while I cook. And when my family comes, they're all looking at that in the window down at the neighbor's house, looking at what they're eating for dinner. instead of looking at this beautiful lake that's in my backyard. What's important to you when making a decision like this? Okay, in my case, my late husband and I were like, well, we've never really done anything this major before. We took the house down to the studs. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what to expect. We don't know what to expect in terms of budget or timeline or anything. Okay, so it's important to us to understand your process and understand how this whole thing works. What questions or concerns do you have about your project? You know, is this a couple $100,000 project or a $500,000 project, or like we don't even know if this is in our budget? Closing questions. What else is important for you to understand about how we work? I have a dog. She's kind of a bad dog. She might not let you in the house. So I need to understand your process and how you work if we actually go forward with something. What other questions do you have? Now that you know the steps in our process, would you like to take that next step? Okay, give them a chance to say no. Don't try and coerce somebody into a, hey, I've always hated the either or close. Is next Saturday better for you or next Thursday? And I'm thinking neither, because I don't like you, you know? Do you want to take a next step or not? Yes, I want to take a next step. Okay, great. Let's get that scheduled. Here's what that looks like. What would you like to do next is another good question to ask. People who are wired to people who are people don't like to let anybody down. And so they hate saying no. And those are the people that will say, yeah, sure, let's do a follow-up. Here's my contact information. And then you will never talk to them again because they're going to completely ghost you. Okay, so that, you know, would you like to take a next step and what would you like to do next are really good questions to let those people off the hook if they really don't want to hurt your feelings, but they don't want to go any further. Taking notes. Real prospects only. You're going to have to qualify pretty quickly whether these are people you want to work with or not. I always did the right card, left card, right pocket, left pocket business card management system. If you went in my right pocket, you know that you were going to get followed up with. If you went in my left pocket, you were going in the trash can, so you don't clutter up my database. Okay, same thing with contact information. You can take notes with everybody, but only follow up with those people who you actually want to work with. Be picky. Pickier you are, the more your odds of converting something into a sale are going to be. Take a specific sheet, you know, generally this size, because you're at a trade show, you don't have that much time to actually take your notes on. One central collection point at the end of the day, so people aren't going home with notes in their pocket and somebody else, you know, has these 3 prospects to follow up with and this person has these 5 prospects to follow up with, and nobody's coordinating the total pile, so they don't get entered into your database. You don't have time to nurture them after the show, right? They get lost. So one central collection point, they can still, you know, the salesperson can write their name at the top so that, you know, that lead doesn't get lost, but somewhere they get recorded so that you know that you can nurture them as you go forward. All right, after the expo, so they leave, they're excited, you're exhausted, you pack up, you go home. By now you will have done a great job with your pre-show stuff. You'll have had a great show. Now the real work begins, because unless somebody's already in process, right, they've already signed, the project's already in process and you're just picking stuff out, now you need to get them from interested to, yes, I'm interested in doing this with you. So here's the statistics on show follow-up. A little over a quarter of leads get contacted. And when you think about it, it sounds like an absolutely appalling statistic. But when you think about it, you've just done all this work before the show. You set up, you get people there, you work all weekend, you tear it down, you're tired, right? And then people are back to the office on Monday morning, or they're back out in the field on Monday morning, and they got catch up to do, right? And all of a sudden, this kind of slips to the bottom of the pile, and then you're 24 hours out, and then 48 hours out, and then you're a week out, and then a second week goes by, and then they're embarrassed to pick up the telephone and call because it's now been 2 weeks and they don't want to make that phone call. So average number of calls to a lead, 1.5, and average contacts made 1 week post show. Here's the thing. The minute they leave that showroom floor, they are going cold by the moment, because they're going back to their families and their kids and their pets and their work on Monday morning. And this goes from being something they're super excited about to, oh yeah, that was really a fun, cool show that I walked through on Saturday or Sunday, and it's just a distant memory. So, key follow-up stuff. Sort your contacts by A, B, C, and D. A's are your high-value ones and your sooner timing. Okay, they've got some sense of urgency to them. B's, mid-value, C's, low. Have your notes by contact. Timing, 24 to 48 hours after you talk. So if you talk to somebody on Saturday, 48 hours is Monday, right? Sunday or Monday, be making phone calls. 3 calls, 3 emails minimum, 3 texts perhaps, depending on who you're talking to. My stepdaughter, for example, who is 36, she's not on email. If I want to get a hold of her, I'm gonna have to text. So know your audience there. Yeah, text if appropriate. But get them while they're still hot and excited. That's why you want to book the next appointment then and there at the booth, if you can. So this is what everybody usually says. Hi, this is Susan, and I'm from Bella Domicile, and we met at the Build and Expo show, and I'm calling to follow up. And they're going to be like, who are you? Right? Okay, better. Hi, this is Mike McKay from your company. We talked at the Build and Remodel Expo on Sunday. You were really interested in our deck design from a house we built in Shorewood. Okay, much better opening. Remind them of what it was they were trying to solve. What was their better desired future? Which means you're going to have good notes to follow up. The first thing they're going to ask you is, how much does something cost? Okay, how much does it cost to have a kitchen design? How much does it cost to redo windows? And our instinct is to say, oh, it's going to cost this much, or it's going to cost in this range. Instead, if you can train yourself to say this phrase, just so I can help you best, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Tell me more about how you live. Tell me about who lives in this house with you, or are you here by yourself? What's important to you in a project? All of a sudden, you're gaining information, and my mind is off the price. Okay, you're adding value right away. Yeah, so we're back into opening questions, investigating needs questions, and closing questions. Nurturing your database. Put these people into your database and start to touch them once a month with something of value. Okay, I love things like home winterization checklists. That's of huge value. Here's the stuff you need to be doing in the winter. Here's the stuff you need to do in the spring, in the summer, in the fall. Here's what to do if something goes awry. Here's who to call. So really doing some of those high value, low risk stuff. Always a call to action on whatever you're sending. I think one of the best from a direct mail standpoint, is anybody on Sprinkman Real Estate's snail mail list? Okay, about every 2 weeks, I get something in the mail from Sprinkman. Always talking about home prices on the lake, talking about, you know, sometimes they'll do joint ventures with you guys and feature a home or two that's on the lake and a remodel that was done. They're always interesting. I actually save them. I save them. They're that well done. But the key is consistency. Every 2 weeks, I get something in the, it looks familiar. I know it's going to be of high value. It's not just some salesy whatever. It's something that I'm going to actually take some time to look at. A minimum of 4 to 6 months, 4 to 6 times over 4 to 6 months. Your goal is to stay top of mind and be the expert, be the go-to for that. And then after the show, really take stock with your team. This is almost either first thing Monday morning or while you're, you know, right before you've torn down your booth. Really do a like, best, change next time. 2 columns. What do we like best about this show that we want to make sure we do again? What would we change next time if we could? Total cost versus new business. You want to go back and say, you know, what kind of a return on our investment did we get? Test and measure what your best calls to action were. It's going to vary, but there are going to be some messages that resonate better than others. And make sure that all those new contacts actually end up in your database. So that task has to be assigned to somebody so that can happen. Oh, and there we go. Okay, questions? You guys have been super quiet. That's it. Everybody's going to have a wonderful, awesome Sell 20 Homes trade show.
So you're collecting business cards? Is that what your mindset is about their information? Or?
Business cards are some sort of a contact form, but you're going to talk to a lot of people. And probably by about the 3rd one, your ability to remember who you talked to about what and what they looked like is gonna become pretty limited. So just you know, I'm kind of in favor of a half sheet unless you need, you know, a lot more information than that. Remember, you're probably not going to make the sale at the show, but you need enough to be able to really say, hey, we talked about this at the show. Okay, and I showed you samples that we used in XYZ building project over here.
What's the consensus on texting people now?
You mean after the show?
Mm-hmm.
You might ask them how you want them, how they'd like you to follow up. Just, you know, I can follow up by email, text, or phone call. Which one's your preference?
Mm-hmm.
But don't be texting on your phone while you're sitting slumped back in your chair.
Yeah.
I do some trade shows for another business that I have where a lot of the bigger shows, they all have the capture where you're scanning people's, like, you know, name badges.
Sure.
So what's your take on a show of that caliber or size, I guess, where everybody's capturing, scanning everybody's name badge, all the people, you know, the attendees of the show? Like, what's your timeline in that event when everybody's has that built-in auto email reply and it's all coming out at the same time? From every booth that they stopped at for a 3-day show or whatever.
So you're actually doing you the owner of the booth are scanning their tag, scanning their name tag. I would only scan the people that you want to follow up with, because you don't want them in your database, right? Like dead weight in your database is just clutter.
But as far as like timing with a mass just flood in an average person's inbox after doing a 3-day, like I do shows in Vegas, and you know, it's a huge show, they've been scanned by 100 people, Like, do you think it's better to wait a little longer, or you think just immediately get on them? Just
immediately get on.
Just stay right there.
Yeah, they're. I mean, think about what happens with you guys when you go back to work on Monday morning, right? This is, you come back to a mountain of stuff that's you didn't get to on Thursday and Friday that you have to get done, and that's where your brain goes, is you dive into that work, and then all of a sudden that person that you said, yeah, I'd love to talk with you next week, right? That's just gone. It's just gone. So this is one where there's a lot of emotion tied up in these purchases. You got to get them while they're still on that high, while they're still excited from the show. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you say take out like the clutter in the booth,
yeah,
like what's the balance of like what you're showing them versus extra paraphernalia? Can you just elaborate that on a little further?
I think if what you have in the booth is what you're showing, that's fine. When you start to have piles of paper and cups of coffee and, you know, just, I wouldn't worry about this with you guys because you're designers. That's what you do. Yeah, if you keep it in general to what it actually is that you sell, then I think you're fine.
Okay. It's you're not saying like don't have too much stuff to see.
Right, right. And you can always have stuff that's in a cupboard that oh, you know what, this isn't out here, but Hank, come over here for a second, let me show you this. So it's not, you know, you don't end up with tiling and flooring and all proudly on display. Less is more. Okay, what else, you guys? How comfortable are you? Like, how comfortable, excited are people for the show? Do you feel like you're ready, or do you feel like you still have a lot of work to do?
We got a lot of work.
We got a lot.
We haven't. I don't know.
We haven't done a show.
Ever done a show?
Well, I haven't done a show with Window Design Center in like 3 or 4 years for sure.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of trying to pull together what is going to be relevant, you know, and what is new or exciting in the sexy world of Windows.
Yeah. Well, there is sexy stuff in Windows, like, you know, the blinds in the windows. I know that's not sexy for you guys, but you know, for Susan homeowner, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I think that's for us is deciding, you know, what we're going to feature, and you know, all of this is just really great, sort of like sales, you know, or sales training refresher.
Right.
You know, it's like open-ended questions and engaging your client and you know that kind of thing.
Right.
Which I think is great.
Yeah, a lot of it is honestly, trade shows haven't been for the last, you know, there was a little bit of a hiatus there, a couple of years, and it's just getting your head back into, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to ask questions and not tell everybody the 17 features and benefits of this pointer. And going into it disciplined about that kind of stuff.
One question you didn't mention up there is the budget question. What's your take on cutting the chase? All right, what's your budget? Like, I mean, are you hitting people with that right off the bat? I know it's kind of a difficult question for people to answer sometimes. What's your take on that budget question?
I would start with questions. Okay, so if somebody says, how much is this going to cost? Just so I can help you best, do you mind if I ask you a few questions around that? And ask some truly qualified, like, have you done this before? Do you have any idea? Like, because many people that come through this show won't. They will be like I was. Like, I literally asked the architect when we got the initial, like, bids back. I was like, oh my God, is this for one house or 2 houses? like we just had no idea. And a lot of people don't. So it's threatening to your customer, right, to say, oh, we plan on spending whatever, 50 or 100 or $500,000, because then the immediate thing is, oh, they're going to spend every penny of that, right? They don't want to show their hand, but you need to know some information. So have you done anything like this before? Do you have any idea what this kind of stuff costs? I mean, that's an honest, legit question. Based on what you've told me so far, if you have to give them a range, a project like you're describing is going to run somewhere between $20,000 and $250,000. Huge range. Okay, I got to ask you a whole lot more questions to know where you're going to fall in between, but at least then they can say, holy cow, man, I thought you were going to give me a $5,000 version of this. Then you know what, I think then go talk to Joe over there. They do more entry-level work. But the odds of somebody actually giving you a budget number, that's a pretty sophisticated buyer. And they know what they want and they know what it costs. And that's not the lion's share of people that are going to walk through a build and remodel expo. They would probably just call you direct.
And they probably lie.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on like entry tactics? I know you're like, don't do the give away an iPad, blah 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 blah. But I like actually kind of like similar to the shows he's been talking about. I've done like the retail side, the buying side of like an Atlanta trade show, and those are huge trade shows and stuff.
Yep.
So the rooms are much larger, but they all kind of do an entry tactic as of like, oh, come in, we have like free snacks, we have, you know, whatever people might need, a place to like put your feet up for a half an hour, but people are walking around for the whole day, so it's a little bit different. What do you think about that, or do you think that's not as relevant because these are smaller?
Well, they are smaller shows.
Yeah.
And think about it for a second. If you go for volume over quality, right? That's a lot more follow-up for you. And a lot more, oh, you know, no, sorry, or just no callbacks or whatever. If you make your entry point relevant, like you get certain something or other we'll throw in for free, you know, as a trade show special, if we've got the follow-up appointment within the next week and you sign on a project by whatever, 15 days, okay? That's a much more serious follow-up than, hey, I got 100 contacts, I got 100 phone calls to make on Monday morning, and then it's, you know, it's marginally better than a cold call, but you're probably at about, you know, maybe 1 to 2% of those people are actually real.
Even if it's not necessarily asking for a follow-up, but like to get somebody into your booth. That's more what I mean by that, I guess. What do you feel about that? Or do you think that's not as much of an issue because people can kind of see it from where they're walking?
No, I'm big on get out from behind whatever the stuff is and actually pull them into the booth. You can use candy. I'm not a big, you know, come and get our pen.
Yeah.
I suppose then they have your pen when they go home, but if they're interested in what you do, you know, it's much more productive to say, hey, come on in, let me show you this. This is really, really cool. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, even if you're not looking for a kitchen today, let me show you this because I guarantee you'll absolutely love it.
Okay.
And I'll go, oh, all right. I mean, it's not that big of a show. I don't even know what I'm opening. All right, don't do that in your trade show.
What about the use of like technology, you know, and how much you want to be using that? If there was an iPad or something, or if you had an HDMI cord that you could hook up and have like a slideshow of photos, is that good or is that too distracting?
You'll see a lot of that. I think it's fine as long as that's not the only thing that's in your booth. So what a lot of people did last year was they didn't want to bring the big booth in because, you know, it was the first year back and, you know, it was on and off. You know, the show was on, the show was off, the show was on, the show was off. So they did smaller booths and they just put the, you know, the big screen TV in the back. There's nothing to draw you in. You know, you could You know, you'll see people they may sit and look from afar, and then you can say, hey, you want to see it in practice? Come on in. But I think you need to have both if you're gonna do that.
Okay. Yeah, because there's some of those websites, you know, you can actually take a photo of your house or whatever, a room or something like that, and then if you actually, you know, you can kind of see those photos and then touch and feel the actual product, right? And it kind of gets them really in their project. Right there. Right. So, and I don't have all those services available to me yet, but I'm brainstorming and thinking that would be sweet, you know.
Next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you've got a library of different kinds of projects and you can say, oh man, here's a lake home we just did, or here's a log home we just did up north. Boom, here are the befores, here's the afters. That
kind of stuff, that's quick instead of just only having a certain amount of space to put up photos. Right, and doing that, so. Yeah,
I think that'd be pretty cool.
Sweet.
And then at the same time, get them to the tactile piece of it. Here, this is it.
Right, yep.
Right, you can pick it up and look at it. You can see how substantial it is. Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. Well, thanks, you guys. Please, the little green feedback forms, please give us some feedback on the back side of that. We have some thank you gifts for you guys. That top one, the free daily dose of business, is written by Mike McKay, who's my business partner. We promise it's no more than a 30-second read. I get 150 emails a day, and I make time to read this one. Okay, it's that good. Sometimes it's entertaining. It's always thought-provoking. 12-week sales training program for construction professionals. That's if you need sales training in your organization, that's a really good program to take advantage of. Speaking again, or if you want to do a 20-minute strategy session with a coach, just please mark one of those areas or right in your own area. But that's kind of our thank you to you for being here today, and looking forward to seeing all of you at the show. I'm excited.
Thank you, Susan.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have a pen I can borrow?
Oh, yeah, right there.
Oh,
I was gonna say, I know Ken's got like a reservoir of them somewhere. And everybody's coming to the Nari vendor fair on Monday, right? It's fun.
What was that event?
It's a trade show with beer and wine. The Nari vendor fair is on Monday. So this is the meeting where they elect all of the officers for the next year, and then there's a vendor fair for companies that are vendors of like people like me. Like people like me, and even people like you. Like a lot of the tile guys will have booths there and stuff. And it's like speed dating. So there's like 4 minutes per table, and Kim has her little air horn, and then you move to the next table, and it's fun. It's fun. I'm sure she'll let you in if you're not registered yet. Helpful?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
Don't you love it when people ask you things like that? Like, what are you going to say? Nope.
Seat better.
Alright, well, thank you all for coming, and yeah, I'll see some of you on Monday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Is he here?
Thank you. Sir?
I'm Aaron.
Hi, Aaron.
Susan. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you.